Donald Trump joins us. Mr. Trump, thank you very much. If you were President of the United States today, I would imagine you'd be preparing for the big storm.
Well, you'd be preparing for a lot of problems, I can tell you. It's we have bigger problems even than the storm if you look at our country. We have some very big problems.
Well, you're right about that.
You know, Donald Trump, as we speak to you now, we understand Hillary Clinton's having a rough day today. Her emails were attempted to be hacked by Russians, and we know at least over the course of 4 hours on an August date in 2011. This is something that we've been going through this morning, and we have about 3 of them that we can show you. But before we go through the specifics on these emails, what about Hillary Clinton's situation here, that she was made vulnerable by these Russian hackers in the form of fake speeding tickets, strikes you?
Well, look, the whole thing is terrible for our country. What she did as Secretary of State was ridiculous, and you know, she wanted total privacy for whatever reason. You would have had much more privacy the other way, but what she did is totally illegal. You look at what happened to General Petraeus, and as somebody who's a real expert on the subject said to me, he was 5% of what she did. It was nothing by comparison, and they destroyed his life. I mean, you know, they basically gave him a 2-year sentence. And what she did was totally illegal. And it's hard to believe that nothing further is... I mean, it's hard to believe that she's even talking about running for president. You wouldn't believe it's possible, frankly, with what she's done, and even the criminality involved, that she can be talking about running for president.
Well, speaking of the criminality, if she... You know, the FBI is looking at it right now. If they decide not to indict her, what would that say? It would obviously be politics, right?
Well, I think they probably won't indict her because...
You don't?
Yeah, because the Attorney General is from New York, who I believe is a friend of Hillary Clinton. I think they probably won't indict her, and it's very unfair to General Petraeus and other people who have been indicted for far less than what she's done. But it's pure politics, and it's Democrats. And what will be interesting, if a Republican gets in, hopefully it's going to be Trump, if a Republican gets in, what would be, you know, you have a 6-year statute of limitations on this. What would be interested if the Republicans get in, what would happen to her? Would they go after her? Because then you would have somebody that would be, I'm sure, very fair, but they'd look at it fairly, and would that happen? She may very well have to win the presidency because she may have bigger problems if she doesn't.
Right. Here's an example of the emails that have emerged, and, you know, they're about 30% through. We're going to see drip, drip, drip. This is to Cheryl Mills, her assistant, who made the decision that the state will not use the terms mother and father, and it says substitute parent in 1 or 2. I'm not defending the decision, but I disagree with I knew nothing about it in front of this Congress. I could live with letting people in non-traditional families choose another descriptor, so as long as we retain the resumption of mother and father, we need to address this, or we will be facing huge Fox-generated media storm led by Palin et al. So she had no clue about what we actually were doing on Fox and Friends. But
not the equality candidate that she is today.
Now she did.
Right.
Now she did.
Let's move on and let's talk about something else. We were talking about your comments 48 hours ago before the new news happened, with Russia going ahead and bombing and giving us hours' notice, saying stay out of the area. We're going to start bombing. They tell our emissary in Baghdad this information without consultation. And now we find out, Donald Trump, they're not even bombing ISIS. They're bombing enemies of Assad. Does that change your stance of letting Russia handle it?
Well, you know, the biggest problem I have is that you look at what's gone on with Libya, with Gaddafi, and Iraq with Saddam Hussein, and with all of these people that we've been fighting against, and the problem is far greater. I mean, Iraq is a total disaster, but Iraq led to the Middle East. Then you look at Libya, total disaster. We don't know who these rebels are. You know, we're supposed to be fighting with rebels. We have no idea. Some of the people, I spoke to one of the generals, they didn't even know who they are we're fighting for. Is it worse than Assad? What's going on? And I do say this, Russia destroyed itself. You know, when it was the Soviet Union, they spent so much money in Afghanistan, they got bogged down. You watch. I bet they get bogged down again. They're going to go in here. They're going to get bogged down again. I really think, Brian, I understand your view, and I fully understand both sides of the picture. But I think we have to be very cool. Let's just see what happens. Don't move too fast. We're fighting for rebels that we have no idea who they are. They're probably
Right.
going to be, if based on everything else we've seen with Iraq and with Libya, they're probably going to be worse than what you have in right now. And what you have in right now is very bad.
It is very bad, sir. Let me just ask you this. I don't believe you when you say sit back and let Russia take the lead. You're not a person who wants anyone to take the lead. You
No,
want to be
but-
number one. Why
but
rest
Elizabeth,
on their
you-
laurels when they are underhanded and undermining our methods right now? And we find out they're not even bombing who they said they would.
But you don't want to jump in for people that we don't even know who they are. We're fighting for people that we have no idea who these rebels are. I've heard the rebels are worse than anybody else. I mean, if they could be ISIS.
Do we agree that
have
ISIS
no
is our
idea
enemy?
who they are.
Donald Trump, do we agree that ISIS is our enemy?
ISIS is absolutely the
So
enemy.
that's where our intention was.
ISIS is absolutely the enemy, and we have to do something very strong against ISIS, and frankly, we should be bombing the hell out of them. And frankly, go beyond the lines. You have to go beyond the lines of Syria. You know, we're talking about Syria, but ISIS is in Iraq, very big league. ISIS is all over the place. We have to be bombing ISIS. But I don't think we should act so fast. We can just slow it down a little bit. Let's see what happens. Remember this. We're fighting for people that we have no idea who they were. Some of them we didn't even know until recently. And by the way, they could be ISIS. We could be fighting for ISIS. So I think we have to be very cool. I'll be honest. We have to be, and that's not usually the way I am. I want to be, I want to be very proactive. But I think we have to watch it, see. I believe Russia has a big stake in getting rid of ISIS also because they don't want them going into Russia.
Right.
I've heard that for a long time. If I knew who these people were, if we thought they were George Washington, if we thought they were great, I'm all for you. But we have to find out. We have no idea who we're fighting for.
All right.
And it could be worse than Assad. As bad as he is, he's bad. But it could be worse than Assad.
Yeah, I mean, look at Gaddafi and Mubarak and Hussein. We had regime change in all those places. And
look what happened.
Right. Exactly. We took the lid off the garbage can. Should have left the lid on it. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the brand new USA Today Suffolk University poll. And congratulations, you are, once again, leading the pack at 23%. You're 10 above Ben Carson and Carly Fiorina. Marco Rubio has 9%, and it looks like you're about 3 times what Jeb Bush has right now.
Well, I'm honored. I mean, I just see these polls coming out. We've had polls where I'm at 36 and 37. I guess they're online, so people don't like to report them, but I think they're really accurate polls. Right. And last night in New Hampshire, we had 3,556 people. It was unbelievable, and the enthusiasm and everything else. So there's something happening out there that's really beautiful to watch.
And we got a glimpse of Melania in her first interview. Will we be seeing more of Mrs. Trump?
At People magazine, right?
Well, you will, and I'm sure she'll be on your show at the right time. She's going to be there. She would love to be.
Well, save her spot. Melania and I have talked before. We cannot
Absolutely.
She's got a great perspective on being an immigrant to this country.
Right. Yeah. All right, Donald Trump, thank you very much for joining us. Go run your empire in your presidential campaign.
I will. Thank you very much.
Quarters in New York City. So you're back. How does it feel?
I'm back.
How does it feel?
Well, it feels good. You've always been fair to me, Bill. I've never had a problem with you. You've always treated me with respect and fairly, and I've always appreciated that. Right. You know that.
Well, that's going to change tonight. Okay. We're going to do 2 segments with you.
Why not?
We're going to do 2 segments.
Okay.
First segment is policy. Second will be the fairness doctrine as it pertains to you. Are people being fair to you? All right, policy question number 1. What specific tax deductions will you banish as president in your tax plan?
Well, one thing we're doing is we're getting rid of the carried interest, which, gives hedge fund guys on Wall Street a tremendous advantage. They're making hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're paying very little tax, and I think it's very unfair. And it affects me, too. It, frankly, is a big benefit for me, but I'm willing to do that. It's unfair. It's very substantial, and we're going to get rid of it. We just came out, as you know, yesterday with a tax plan where it's a big simplification and really great for middle-income families.
Right, but
it's going to be a phenomenal bill.
We know it. All right, so this earned interest thing you're going to get away with. How about deductions for private jets? Are they knocked out?
Well, if they're used in business, it's a business tool.
All right, so you're not going to knock out that. How about season tickets at the Yankees?
If it's used for business, we're not knocking that out because that really is something having to do with business. You take people to games, you take people to whatever you're doing. But that's a positive thing. That's a positive thing for the economy. We don't want to, Bill, we don't want to hurt What we don't want to do is we don't want to hurt business. We want to inspire business. We want to inspire people to create jobs.
But I'm trying to get the $20 trillion debt around my neck. I understand you're doing what Ronald Reagan did. You're doing what Ronald Reagan did. I just wrote a book on Reagan. I know Reagan inside and out. You're doing exactly what he did. You want to stimulate the free marketplace by putting more money back into it, more research and development, more job creation. That's what you're trying to do. And I actually agree that that has to be done now after 7 years of Barack Obama failing to stimulate the economy. However, your plan was going to bring down government revenue. All right, they're going to get less money. So you say, but in the long run, they'll get more because more people will be in the workplace, more people will be paying taxes, and it'll go up. Fine, but speculative. Right. Fine, but speculative. So the only thing I'm hearing that you're going to knock out are these hedge fund guys carrying money from one year to the next. And I don't know if that's going to be enough to stop the debt from rising another $5 trillion.
No, the big thing we're doing, Bill, is when I get in, and I will tell you this, and I said this very clearly, I'm a cost cutter. I know how to cut costs. We have tremendous waste and abuse in this country. If you look at some of the things that are happening in the country in terms of costs,
give me one big thing you're going to cut. One big thing you're going to cut right away.
I'm going to cut big Department of Education, as an example. I'm a believer. I mean, you have somebody like Jeb Bush and Rubio and others. They're big into big education and I'm all for education. I want to be local. Department of Education, tremendous cuts. Department of Environmental Protection, where they're actually going around and causing damage as opposed to saving damage. Tremendous amounts of money.
Okay, so you're going to go with a cleaver through.
Tremendous abuse.
All right. Now.
Oh, we're talking about tremendous amounts of money. Bill, we're talking about tremendous amounts of money.
And I believe you if you were elected president.
Taxes.
I believe you if you'd take a cleaver to those things. I believe it. Let's go to
I would
Putin.
do very well. People would be very happy.
Did Putin go up and say, you say you and Putin are going to be close. Did Putin go up to your office and did you guys like bond or anything this week? He's in town.
No, I didn't know anything about him coming to my office, but I will tell you that I think in terms of leadership, he's getting an A and our president is not doing so well. They did not look good together.
What do you think Putin is up to in the Middle East? He's moving planes. He's moving advisors into Syria. What is he up to?
Well, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives, wounded warriors all over, and Putin is now taking over what we started. And he's going into Syria, and he frankly wants to fight ISIS, and I think that's a wonderful thing. You know, I said that a year ago, and everybody said, oh, that's terrible. If he wants to fight ISIS, let him fight ISIS. Why do we always have to do everything? But he wants to go in. He wants to fight ISIS. Now, he wants to keep, as you know, he wants to keep your leadership, your current leadership, Assad, in Syria. Personally, I've been looking at the different players, and I've been watching Assad, and I've been pretty good at this stuff over the years because deals are people. And I'm looking at Assad and saying maybe he's better than the kind of people that we're supposed to be backing because we don't even know.
Yeah, but he's a mass murderer with the gas and all of that. But what's the downside of Putin fighting ISIS?
We don't know.
What's the downside of Putin fighting ISIS?
I say there's very little downside with Putin fighting ISIS, and Putin wants to keep ISIS out of Russia, and therefore he's become very active with respect to ISIS.
I'm going to tell you what the downside is.
And I think that's to our benefit.
I'm going to tell you what the downside is.
Well, you're going to say the downside is we're losing control of the Middle East.
No.
But with this kind of leadership, we're never going to have control of anything.
Once Putin gets in and fights ISIS on behalf of Assad, Putin runs Syria. He owns it. He'll never get out. Never.
All right. Okay. Fine. I mean, you know, we can be in Syria. Do you want to run Syria? Do you want to own Syria?
No,
I want to rebuild
but I think
our country, Bill.
Putin wants to run and call the shots in the Middle East, and the United States will be on his side.
I said that. Sure.
That's what he wants.
Right. And you have huge oil reserves. You have tremendous wealth in the Middle East that people don't even know about. And by the way, forget about Putin. You have Iran is going to take over Iraq. I called that many years ago on your show. I said we should have never gone into Iraq, which I should be given a little credit for vision because I'm the only one running that said that. But we should have never because you totally destabilized the Middle East.
And that's true.
But the fact is that Putin now, well, that's what happened. You destabilized. And by the way, Iran is going to be taking over Iraq, including their vast oil reserves, and the leftovers are taken over by ISIS. So what have we done with our incompetent leadership?
We have given the Middle East primarily to Putin and Iran, and they will run it for the foreseeable future. And if you were elected president,
I believe
you'd have
that's
to
true.
deal with that, and that's going to be one hard thing to deal with. Now, as I said, we're going to hold you over, and we appreciate you coming on. We're going to talk about fairness now from New York City, Donald Trump. What do you say to that? If somebody shoots up a mosque, you're responsible.
Well, I think it's terrible what's going on. I can tell you in New York City, they used to go in and check and do a lot of different things, and now they're not doing any checking. And I think, frankly, the question that was asked of me in New Hampshire, which was a packed house and a lot of enthusiasm, I just didn't want to respond to the question. It's the first time I've ever been sort of made controversial by not responding to a question. But they wanted me to defend President Obama, and he can defend himself. I don't have to defend Obama.
Okay. But, I mean, look, the media is not going to give you a fair shake, and then it's not. But that brings us to me and you. All right? You're on record as saying that I've been fair to you, and I believe I have. So let me ask you a couple of questions. And if they're unfair, you tell me if they're unfair.
All right.
Am I fair to say that in order for you to win the Republican nomination, that you're going to have to change your style and be a bit kinder and more mature? Is that a fair question?
Well, I think it's fair. I think the word mature is not appropriate, but I think it's certainly fair. I think that, as you know, I'm leading every poll, and most polls I'm leading very big. In New Hampshire, in Iowa, if you look at what just came down, South Carolina, the polls all #1, so I can't be doing so badly, Bill, but it's not going to be a question of nice. I think I'm a nice person. I have great relationships. You know me well. I help people. I love people. But it's not going to be a question of that. It's going to be a question of competence, because people are tired of being pushed around by every country in the world, every single thing. We haven't had victories.
But you have to be kind of presidential. I'm going to run a clip now of something you recently said, and then I'm going to ask you another question, which may be unfair. If it is, you tell me. Roll. Now, would I be unfair to say to you, which I would if we were at a Yankee game, hey, calling Senator Rubio a clown was not presidential?
No, I don't think it'd be unfair, but I have to tell you how that all started. I was getting along with him perfectly fine 2 weeks ago. Everything was fine. I don't really know him. And all of a sudden, he attacks me about nothing, but really attacked me quite viciously. And I fought back. I told people that he has one of the worst voting records. He has the worst voting record in the Senate. He never shows up. Senate, he never shows up. I mean, he's not going in for votes, and that you can't do. He's weak on immigration, unbelievably weak on immigration, and I'm all about strong on illegal immigration and other things. So I mentioned it, and I said it loudly, but again, I'm a counterpuncher. He hit me all of a sudden.
Okay,
Same thing with Rand Paul. Rand Paul was so nice.
I didn't mind the Gang of Eight stuff. He's calling him a clown.
He was a member of the Gang of Eight.
That's not presidential. All right, final question.
Okay, listen. Excuse me, Bill. He was a member of the Gang of Eight, which was a disaster. He was totally weak on immigration.
But
and by the way,
fine.
he hasn't changed.
But it's the clown stuff that's not fine. Last question.
Well, okay. I can understand that.
Okay, good. You have the highest...
But he hit me very viciously.
But on policy, you have the highest unfavorables in the polls, all right? More people don't like you than any other candidate. Is it fair to ask you why you think that is?
Well, I also have the highest positives in the poll.
Yeah,
that's
I know.
why
You're
I'm
like
leading
Howard
every
Cosell.
poll.
Remember
So
Howard?
it's a combination.
Yeah, he was like Howard Cosell.
I guess, I think you can see this. I've done very well over the last number of months in terms of getting the unfavorables much better. If you look at New Hampshire, I'm doing great with respect to favorable, unfavorable, very positive. Iowa, the places that I'm going to a lot, South Carolina, I'm doing great in that category. So I think when people see me, when they see I want to make America great again, they all of a sudden say, we really like him. I'm actually a nice person. I try very hard to be a nice person.
You're going to grow on us then. You're going to grow on.
Well, when I go to Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, they really like me, and my favorables are great there because they see me a lot.
I got it. The more you see you, the more you're going to like you. Now, fair interview?
Well, for whatever reason.
Fair? Everything fair? Are we good?
You were very fair. You're always fair.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Almost.
And we're almost, I know. Okay, and we appreciate you coming.
And in fact, not only are we the A team, we even have our own Mr. T, who doesn't mind saying about others, you're a fool.
The best way for us to give this election back would be to nominate a Donald Trump. He'll either implode in a general election, or if, God forbid, if he were in the White House, we have no idea what he would do. You can't just attack him on policy. He doesn't care about policy. It's not enough to say he was for socialized medicine or higher taxes.
Thank you, Governor.
He's not serious.
You got Hillary Clinton to go to your wedding because
true.
you gave her money.
True.
Maybe it works for Hillary Clinton. It doesn't work
Jeff,
for anybody on this stage.
I was a businessman. I got along with Clinton. I got along with everybody.
Yeah.
That was my job, to get along with people.
But the
I
simple
didn't want
fact is...
Excuse me. 1 second.
No.
I
The
didn't
simple
want
fact
to...
is,
Jeff,
Donald, you
good.
cannot take...
More energy tonight. I like that. First of all, Rand Paul shouldn't even be on this stage. He's number 11. He's got 1% in the polls. And how he got up here, there's far too many people. Anyway.
I think that really goes to the judgment. Do we want someone with that kind of character, that kind of careless language to be negotiating with Putin? Do we want someone like that to be negotiating with Iran? His visceral response to attack people on their appearance, short, tall, fat, ugly. My goodness, that happened in junior high. Are we not way above that? And would we not all be worried to have someone like that in charge of the nuclear arsenal?
Mr. Trump.
I never attacked him on his look. And believe me, there's plenty of subject matter right there.
Donald Trump said the following about you, quote, "Look at that face. Would anyone vote for that? Can you imagine that, the face of our next president?" Mr. Trump later said he was talking about your persona, not your appearance.
I think women all over this country heard very clearly what Mr. Trump said.
I think she's got a beautiful face, and I think she's a beautiful woman.
But let me say this flat out. Donald Trump is unfit to be president of the United States or the Republican Party's nominee.
And Mr. Trump, we don't need an apprentice in the White House. We don't need an apprentice in the White House. We have one right now. He told us all the things we wanted to hear back in 2008. We don't know who you are or where you're going. We need someone who can actually get the job done. And you talked about business.
Well, in Wisconsin,
let me finish.
Excuse me.
No, we talked about
in
this.
Wisconsin, you're losing $2.2 billion right
One of
now.
the reasons
I
Mr.
would
Trump
do
is the
so
front runner,
much
Republican voters say, is because they like the fact that he is not bought and paid for by wealthy donors. Mr. Trump has repeatedly said that the $100 million you've raised for your campaign makes you a puppet for your donors. Are you?
No, absolutely not. People are supporting me because I have a proven record of conservative leadership, where I cut taxes $19 billion over 8 years. We shrunk the state government workforce. We created a climate that led the nation in job growth 7 out of 8 years. We were one of 2 states to go to AAA bond rating. People know that we need principle-centered leadership, a disruptor to go to Washington, D.C. The one guy that had some special interest that I know of that tried to get me to change my views on something that was generous and gave me money was Donald Trump. He wanted casino gambling in Florida.
I didn't want
Yes, you did.
Totally false.
You wanted it, and you didn't get it because I was
it.
opposed to casino gambling before, during, and after. And that's not, I'm not going to be bought by anybody.
I promise, if I wanted it, I would have gotten it.
No way, man.
Believe me.
Nope.
I know my people.
Not even possible.
I know my people.
Is there anything else you want to say about this?
No, I just will tell you that, Jeb made the statement. I'm not only referring to him. A lot of money was raised by a lot of different people that are standing up here. And the donors, the special interests, the lobbyists have very strong power over these people. I'm spending all of my money. I'm not getting any. I turned down so much. I could have right now from special interests and donors, I could have double and triple what he's got. I've turned it down. I've turned down last week $5 million from somebody. So I will tell you, I understand the game. I've been on the other side all of my life, and they have a lot of control over our politicians. And I don't say that favorably, and I'm not sure if there's another system, but I say this, I am not accepting any money from anybody. Nobody has control of me other than the people of this country. I'm going to do the right thing.
You got, according to to what you said on one of the talk shows, you got Hillary Clinton to go to your wedding because you gave her money. Maybe it works for Hillary Clinton. It doesn't work for anybody on this stage.
I was a businessman. I got along with Clinton. I got along with everybody. Yeah. That was my job, to get along with people.
But the simple fact is...
Excuse me. 1 second.
No.
I didn't want to...
Jeff, Donald, you cannot take...
More energy tonight. I like that. Look.
I was asked the question.
I didn't want... It was my obligation as a businessman, to my family, to my company, to my employees, to get along with all politicians. I got along with all of them, and I did a damn good job in doing it. Go ahead.
So, he supports Pelosi, he supports Schumer, he supports Clinton.
Got along with everybody.
And when he asked Florida to have casino gambling. We said no.
Wrong.
We
that
said
there's any
no, and that's the
correlation
simple
between
fact. The simple fact
vaccinations and
is-
autism.
Don't cut me off.
This was something that was spread widely 15 or 20 years ago, and it has not been adequately revealed to the public what's actually going on. Vaccines are very important, certain ones, the ones that would prevent death or crippling. There are others, there are a multitude of vaccines which probably don't fit in that category, and there should be some discretion in those cases. But, a lot of this is pushed by big government, and I think that's one of the things that people so vehemently want to get rid of big government. We have 4.1 million federal employees, 650 federal agencies and departments. That's why they have to take so much of our taxes.
Should he stop saying it? Should he stop saying the vaccines cause autism?
Well, I've just explained it to him. He can read about it if he wants to. I think he's an intelligent man and will make the correct decision after getting the real facts.
Mr. Trump, as president,
Well,
you
I'd
would.
like to
I'm going
respond.
right to you.
I'd like to
Mr. Trump,
respond.
as president, you would be in charge of the Centers for Disease Control and the National Institutes of Health, both of which say you are wrong. How would you handle this as president?
Autism has become an epidemic. 25 years ago, 35 years ago, you look at the statistics, not even close. It has gotten totally out of control. I am totally in favor of vaccines, but I want smaller doses over a longer period of time. Because you take a baby in, and I've seen it, and I had my children taken care of over a long period of time, over a 2 or 3 year period of time, same exact amount. But you take this little beautiful baby and you pump, it looks just like it's meant for a horse, not for a child. And we've had so many instances, people that worked for me just the other day, 2 years old, 2.5 years old, a beautiful child, went to have the vaccine and came back and a week later got a tremendous fever, got very, very sick, now is autistic. I only say I'm in favor of vaccines. Do them over a longer period of time, same amount.
Thank you.
Just in little sections.
Dr. Carson?
And I think you're going to see a big impact on autism.
Dr. Carson, you just heard his medical take.
He's an okay doctor. Okay. But, the fact of the matter is, we have extremely well-documented proof that there's no autism associated with vaccinations. But it is true that we are probably giving way too many in too short a period of time. And a lot of pediatricians now recognize that, and I think are cutting down on the number and the proximity in which those are done.
And
I
that's
think
all
that's
I'm
appropriate.
saying, Jake. That's
Dr.
all
Paul?
I'm saying.
Dr. Paul, I'd like to bring you in.
I'm Donald Trump. I wrote The Art of the Deal. I say not in a braggadocious way. I've made billions and billions of dollars dealing with people all over the world, and I want to put whatever that talent is to work for this country. So we have great trade deals. We make our country rich again. We make it great again. We build up our military. We take care of our vets. We get rid of Obamacare. And we have a great life all together. Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Fiorina, I want to start with you. Fellow Republican candidate and Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal has suggested that your party's frontrunner, Mr. Donald Trump, would be dangerous as president. He said he wouldn't want, quote, such a hothead with his finger on the nuclear codes. You as well have raised concerns about Mr. Trump's temperament. You've dismissed him as an entertainer. Would you feel comfortable with Donald Trump's finger on the nuclear codes?
I think Mr. Trump is a wonderful entertainer. He's been terrific at that business. I also think that one of the benefits of a presidential campaign is the character and capability, judgment and temperament of every single one of us is revealed over time and under pressure. All of us will be revealed over time and under pressure. I look forward to a long race.
You didn't answer my question. Would you feel comfortable with Donald Trump's finger on the nuclear codes? It's an issue that one of your fellow candidates has raised.
That's not for me to answer. It is for the voters of this country to answer. And I have a lot of faith in the common sense and good judgment of the voters of the United States of America.
Mr. Trump?
Well, First of all, Rand Paul shouldn't even be on this stage. He's number 11. He's got 1% in the polls, and how he got up here, there's far too many people. Anyway, as far as temperament, and we all know that, as far as temperament, I think I have a great temperament. I built a phenomenal business with incredible, iconic assets, one of the really, truly great real estate businesses. And I may be an entertainer because I've had tremendous success with #1 bestsellers all over the place, with The Apprentice and everything else I've done. But I will tell you this, what I am far and away greater than an entertainer is a businessman. And that's the kind of mindset this country needs to bring it back. Because we owe $19 trillion right now, $19 trillion, and you need this kind of thinking to bring our country back. And believe me, my temperament is very good, very calm, but we will be respected outside of this country. We are not respected now.
Mr. Senator Paul, your name has been invoked.
I kind of have to laugh when I think, sounds like a non sequitur. He was asked whether or not he would be capable and it would be in good hands to be in charge of the nuclear weapons, and all of a sudden there's a sideways attack at me. I think that really goes to the judgment. Do we want someone with that kind of character, that kind of careless language to be negotiating with Putin? Do we want someone like that to be negotiating with Iran? I think really there's a sophomoric quality that is entertaining about Mr. Trump.
Mr. Trump?
I never attacked him on his look, and believe me, there's plenty of subject matter right there.
But Mr. Trump, I want to give you another chance. Mr. Trump, I want to give you a chance to respond to something that your rival to your left, Governor Bush, said. Governor Bush told me last week when I... Tell Governor Bush why you are a serious candidate and what your qualifications are to be commander-in-chief.
I've actually been in politics all my life, although I've been on that side as opposed to this side. I'm now a politician for about 3 months. Obviously, I'm doing pretty well. I'm #1 in every polls by a lot. But the qualification is that I've dealt with people all over the world, been successful all over the world. Everything I've done virtually has been a tremendous success. When markets changed, when things turned, I heard Governor Pataki, who, by the way, was a failed governor in New York, a very seriously failed. He wouldn't be elected dog catcher right now. I heard what he had to say. And I will tell you this. Atlantic City, I made a tremendous amount of money in Atlantic City. I left 7 years ago. I've gotten great credit for my timing, and that's what I'm all about. I'm a businessman, did really well, and Jeb, what I want to do is put that ability into this country to make our country rich again. And I can do that, and I'm not sure that anybody else in the group will be able to do that.
Governor Bush, would you be comfortable with Donald Trump's finger on the nuclear codes?
I think the voters will make that determination, but what I know to be true is that the next president of the United States is going to have to fix an extraordinarily difficult situation. This administration, with President Obama and Hillary Clinton, has created insecurity, the likes of which we never would have imagined. There's not a place in the world where we're better off today than 6.5 years ago. And that requires a steadiness. That requires an understanding of how the world works. That requires an understanding and appreciation of American leadership in the world. You can't just, talk about this stuff and insult leaders around the world and expect a good result. You have to do this with a steady hand, and I believe I have those skills.
Jake, this is actually what's wrong. This is what's wrong with this debate. We're not talking about real issues. And Mr. Trump, we don't need an apprentice in the White House. We don't need an apprentice in the White House. We have one right now. He told us all the things we wanted to hear back in 2008. We don't know who you are or where you're going. We need someone who can actually get the job done. And you talked about business.
Well, in Wisconsin,
let me finish.
Excuse me.
No, let me talk about
in
this.
Wisconsin, you're losing $2.2 billion right now.
You're using
I would do so much better than that.
Mr. Trump, you're using the talking points of the Democrats. And as we all know, that
I'm using
failed
facts.
3 times in 4.5 years when I got elected, because it is working. We balanced the budget. You want to talk about balanced budgets? You took 4 major projects into bankruptcy over and over and over again. That's what's wrong with the politicians in Washington right now. They think we can take a country into bankruptcy.
Every major business leader has used the I never went bankrupt, by the way, as you know, everybody knows. But out of hundreds of companies, hundreds of deals, I've used the law 4 times, made a tremendous thing. I'm in business. I did a very good job. But I will say this, and people are very, very impressed with what I've done, the business people. But when the folks of Iowa found out the true facts of the job that you've done in Wisconsin, all of a sudden you tubed. He was #1. Now he's number 6 or 7 in the polls. So, look, we brought it out. You were supposed to make $1 billion in the state. You lost 2.2. You have right now a huge budget deficit. That's not a Democratic point. That's a point. That's a fact. And when the people of Iowa found that out, I went to #1, and you went down the tubes.
Governor Walker?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take this on. Because this is an issue that's important in this race. Just because he says it doesn't make it true. The facts are the facts. We bounced a $3.6 billion budget deficit. We did it by cutting taxes $4.7 billion to help working families, family farmers, small business owners, and senior citizens. And it's about time people in America stand up and take note of this. If you want someone who can actually take on the special interest of Washington, which you yourself just said you were part of, using the system, we need somebody who's going to stand up and fight for average Americans to put them back in charge of the government. I'm the one who's taking that on. I'll do that as your next president.
Let's move on. In addition to the fact that he's an outsider, one of the reasons Mr. Trump is a frontrunner, Republican voters say, is because they like the fact that he is not bought and paid for by wealthy donors. Mr. Trump has repeatedly said that the $100 million you've raised for your campaign makes you a puppet for your donors. Are you?
No, absolutely not. People are supporting me because I have a proven record of conservative leadership, where I cut taxes $19 billion over 8 years. We shrunk the state government workforce. We created a climate that led the nation in job growth 7 out of 8 years. We were one of 2 states to go to AAA bond rating. People know that we need principle-centered leadership, a disruptor to go to Washington, D.C. The one guy that had some special interest that I know of that tried to get me to change my views on something that was generous and gave me money was Donald Trump. He wanted casino gambling in Florida.
I didn't want
Yes, you did.
Totally false.
You wanted it, and you didn't get it because I was
it.
opposed to casino gambling
I
before,
promise I
during, and after. And that's not, I'm not going to be bought by anybody.
I promise, if I wanted it, I would have gotten it.
No way, man.
Believe me.
Nope.
I know my people.
Not even possible.
I know my people.
Is there anything else you want to say about this?
No, I just will tell you that, Jeb made the statement. I'm not only referring to him. A lot of money was raised by a lot of different people that are standing up here. And the donors, the special interests, the lobbyists have very strong power over these people. I'm spending all of my money. I'm not getting any. I turned down so much. I could have right now from special interests and donors, I could have double and triple what he's got. I've turned it down. I've turned down last week $5 million from somebody. So I will tell you, I understand the game. I've been on the other side all of my life, and they have a lot of control over our politicians. And I don't say that favorably, and I'm not sure if there's another system, but I say this, I am not accepting any money from anybody. Nobody has control of me other than the people of this country. I'm going to do the right thing.
You got, according to to what you said on one of the talk shows, you got Hillary Clinton to go to your wedding because you gave her money. True. Maybe it works for Hillary Clinton. It doesn't work for anybody on this stage.
I was a businessman. I got along with Clinton. I got along with everybody. Yeah. That was my job, to get along with people.
But the simple fact is...
Excuse me. 1 second.
No.
I didn't want to...
Fact is, Donald, you cannot take...
More energy tonight. I like that. Look.
I was asked the question.
I didn't want... It was my obligation as a businessman, to my family, to my company, to my employees, to get along with all politicians. I got along with all of them, and I did a damn good job in doing it. Go ahead.
So, he supports Pelosi, he supports Schumer, he supports Clinton.
Got along with everybody.
And when he asked Florida to have casino gambling, we said no.
Wrong.
We said no, and that's the simple fact. The simple fact is...
Don't make things up, Jeb. Don't
cut me off,
Come on, don't make things up.
Jake, can I say something?
Move to Russia, if we could. Russia is sending troops and tanks into Syria right now to prop up a U.S. enemy, Bashar al-Assad. President Obama's incoming top general says, quote, Russia presents the greatest threat to our national security. Mr. Trump, you say you can do business with President Vladimir Putin. You say you will get along, quote, very well. What would you do right now, if you were president, to get the Russians out of Syria?
All right, so number one, they have to respect you. He has absolutely no respect for President Obama. Zero. Syria is a mess. You look at what's going on with ISIS in there. Now think of this. We're fighting ISIS. ISIS wants to fight Syria. Why are we fighting ISIS in Syria? Let them fight each other and pick up the remnants. I would talk to him. I would get along with him. I believe, and I may be wrong, in which case I'd probably have to take a different path, but I would get along with a lot of the world leaders that this country is not getting along with. We don't get along with China. We don't get along with the heads of Mexico. We don't get along with anybody. And yet at the same time, they rip us left and right. They take advantage of us economically and every other way. We get along with nobody. I will get along, I think, with Putin, and I will get along with others, and we will have a much more stable world.
So just to clarify, the only answer I heard to the question I asked is that you would reach out to Vladimir Putin and you would do what?
I believe that I will get along. We will do, between that, Ukraine, all of the other problems, we won't have the kind of problems that our country has right now with Russia and many other nations.
Senator Jake, Mr. Trump, yes. 2 years ago, President Obama drew a red line that the Syrian dictator Bashar Assad crossed. President Obama threatened to strike. He did not. His knees buckled. We now have 4 million refugees. Syria is a living hell. And he turned to the Congress for the authority to back him up. You have 3 senators to your right who said no. Do they bear responsibility for this refugee crisis? And what would you have done when Bashar Assad crossed that line?
Number one, I wouldn't have drawn the line, but once he drew it, he had no choice but to go across. They do bear some responsibility, but I think he probably didn't do it not for that reason. Somehow he just doesn't have courage. There's something missing from our president. Had he crossed the line and really gone in with force and done something to Assad, if he had gone in you with tremendous force, you wouldn't have millions of people displaced all over the world.
How much responsibility, Mr. Trump, did the senators hold?
I think they had a responsibility, absolutely. I think we have 3 of them here.
Senator Rubio?
I think they had a responsibility, yes.
Senator, be finished.
Thank you, Governor Bush. Donald Trump, let me just the quote was, I'm not sure we need $500 million for women's health issues. He said he misspoke. You said that that's going to haunt him. Why do you think that?
I think it's a terrible statement. I think it's going to haunt him, absolutely. He came back later and he said he misspoke. There was no question because I heard when he said the statement. I was watching and he said the statement and I said, wow, I can't believe it. I will take care of women. I respect women. I will take care of women. One thing we will say, and I would like to get back to the Iran situation. We're talking about Iran. The agreement was terrible. It was incompetent. I've never seen anything like it. One of the worst contracts of any kind I've ever seen. And nobody ever mentions North Korea, where you have this maniac sitting there, and he actually has nuclear weapons, and somebody better start thinking about North Korea and perhaps a couple of other places, but certainly North Korea. And Ted and I have spoken. A lot of us have spoken. We're talking about Iran. They're bad actors. Bad things are going to happen. But in the meantime, you have somebody right now in North Korea who's got nuclear weapons and who is saying almost every other week, I'm ready to use them, and we don't even mention it.
Governor Bush?
There are 13,000 community-based organizations that provide health services to women. 13,000 in this country. I don't believe that Planned Parenthood should get a penny from the federal government. Those organizations should get funding, just as I increased funding when I was governor of the state. That's the way you do this, is you improve the condition for people. And Donald, when I was governor, we also increased the opportunities for women. Women's income grew 3 times faster than national average when I was governor.
So why did you say it? Why did you say it? I know, but why did you say it? I heard it myself. Why did you say it?
Child support. We increased child support.
You said you're going to cut funding for women's health issues. You said it.
Record.
Yeah, except you said it.
I want to. We're going to get to.
Jake, just one more.
Ms. Fiorina, I do want to ask you about this. In an interview last week in Rolling Stone magazine, Donald Trump said the following about you, quote, "Look at that face. Would anyone vote for that? Can you imagine that, the face of our next president?" Mr. Trump later said he was talking about your persona, not your appearance. Please feel free to respond what you think about his persona.
You know, it's interesting to me. Mr. Trump said that he heard Mr. Bush very clearly and what Mr. Bush said. I think women all over this country heard very clearly what Mr. Trump said.
I think she's got a beautiful face, and I think she's a beautiful woman.
All right, on that note, no topic perhaps has been more combustible in this campaign than the issue of immigration. Mr. Trump, you have called for deporting every undocumented immigrant. Governor Christie has said, quote, There are not enough law enforcement officers, local, county, state, and federal, combined to forcibly deport 11 to 12 million people. Tell Governor Christie how much your plan will cost and how you will get it done.
Correct. First of all, I want to build a wall that works. So important, and it's a big part of it. Second of all, we have a lot of really bad dudes in this country from outside, and I think Chris knows that maybe as well as anybody. They go, if I get elected, first day, they're gone. Gangs all over the place, Chicago, Baltimore, no matter where you look. We have a country based on laws. I will make sure that those laws are adhered to. These are illegal immigrants. I don't think you'd even be asking this question if I didn't run. Because when I ran, and I brought this up at my opening remarks at Trump Tower, I took heat like nobody has taken heat in a long time. And then they found out with the killing of Kate from San Francisco and so many other crimes, they found out that I was right. And most people, many people, apologized to me. I don't think you'd even be talking about illegal immigration if it weren't for me. So we have a country of laws. They're going to go out, and they'll come back if they deserve to come back. If they've had a bad record, if they've been arrested, if they've been in jail, they're never coming back. We're going to have a country again. Right now, we don't have a country, we don't have a border, and we're going to do something about it. And it can be done with proper management, and it can be done with heart.
Governor Bush, Mr. Trump has suggested that your views on immigration are influenced by your Mexican-born wife. He said that, quote, if my wife were from Mexico, I think I would have a soft spot for people from Mexico. Did Mr. Trump go too far in invoking your wife?
He did. He did. You're proud of your family, just as I am.
Correct.
To subject my wife into the middle of a raucous political conversation was completely inappropriate, and I hope you apologize for that, Donald.
Well, I have to tell you, I hear phenomenal things. I hear your wife is a lovely woman.
She is.
I
She's
don't
fantastic.
know her, and this
She
is
is
a total
absolutely the love of my life, and she's right here. And why don't you apologize for her?
No, I won't
right
do that
now.
because I said nothing wrong, but I do hear she's a lovely woman.
So here's the deal. My wife is a Mexican-American. She's an American by choice. She loves this country as much as anybody in this room. And she wants a secure border, but she wants to embrace the traditional American values that make us special and make us unique. We're at a crossroads right now. Are we going to take the Reagan approach, the hopeful, optimistic approach, the approach that says that you come to our country legally, you pursue your dreams with a vengeance, you create opportunities for all of us, or the Donald Trump approach? The approach that says that everything is bad, that everything's coming to an end.
Mr. Trump,
I'm
Jeb
on the Reagan
said
side of this.
That they come into our country as an act of love. With all of the problems that we have in so many instances, we have wonderful people coming in. But with all of the problems, this is not an act of love. He's weak on immigration. By the way, in favor of Common Core, which is also a disaster. But weak on immigration, he doesn't get my vote.
Dana, with all due respect to Mr. Trump, immigration did not come because Mr. Trump brought it up. We talked about it in 2012. We talked about it in 2008. We talked about it in 2004. We have been talking about it for 25 years. This is why people are tired of politicians.
We're going to come to you. I just want to get Governor Bush a chance to respond to what Mr. Trump said.
Look, first of all, I wrote a book about this 4 years ago now. And I laid out a comprehensive conservative approach for immigration reform. And it does require securing the border. No one disagrees with that. But to build a wall and to deport people 500,000 a month would cost hundreds of billions of dollars, Donald. Hundreds of billions of dollars. It would destroy community life. It would tear families apart. And it would send a signal to the rest of the world that the United States values that are so important for our long-term success no longer matter in this country.
As I said, we are spending $200 billion. We are spending $200 billion a year on maintaining what we have. We will move them out. The great ones will come back. The good ones will come back. They'll be expedited. They'll be back. They'll come back legally. We'll have a country. They'll come back legally.
Okay, on that note, you have criticized Governor Bush for speaking Spanish on the campaign trail. You said, quote, he should really set an example by speaking English in the United States. What's wrong with speaking Spanish?
Well, I think it's wonderful and all, but I did it a little bit half-heartedly, but I do mean it to a large extent. We have a country where to assimilate, you have to speak English. And I think that where he was and the way it came out didn't sound right to me. we have to have assimilation. To have a country, we have to have assimilation. I'm not the first one to say this, Dana. We've had many people over the years, for many, many years, saying the same thing. This is a country where we speak English, not Spanish.
Well, I've been speaking English here tonight, and I'll keep speaking English, but the simple fact is, if a high school kid asked me a question in Spanish, a school, by the way, a voucher program that was created under my watch, the largest voucher program in the country, where kids can go to a Christian school, and they ask me a question in Spanish, I'm going to show respect and answer that question in Spanish, even though they do speak English and even though they embrace American values.
This was a reporter, not a high school kid, by the way.
Mr. Trump, you say that babies born in the United States to undocumented immigrants should not any longer get automatic American citizenship. Ms. Fiorina says that you are pandering on this issue and acting like the politicians that you rail against. What's your message to Ms. Fiorina on birthright citizenship?
Well, first of all, the 14th Amendment says very, very clearly to a lot of great legal scholars, not television scholars, but legal scholars, that it is wrong. It can be corrected with an act of Congress, probably doesn't even need that. A woman gets pregnant. She's 9 months. She walks across the border. She has the baby in the United States, and we take care of the baby for 85 years. I don't think so. And by the way, Mexico and almost every other country anywhere in the world doesn't have that. We're the only ones dumb enough, stupid enough to have it. And people, and by the way, this is not just with respect to Mexico. They're coming from Asia to have babies here, and all of a sudden we have to take care of the babies for the life of the baby. The 14th Amendment, it reads properly. You can go, and it's probably going to have to go through a process of court, probably ends up at the Supreme Court. But there are a lot of great legal scholars that say that is not correct. And in my opinion, it makes absolutely no. We're the only one of the only countries. We're going to take care of those babies for 70, 75, 80, 90 years. I don't think so.
Ms. Fiorina, the vast majority of countries do not have birthright citizenship. Donald Trump is right about that. Why is it pandering when he says this?
First, let me say we have just spent a good bit of time discussing as Republicans how to solve this problem. I would ask your audience at home to ask a very basic question. Why have Democrats not solved this problem? President Obama campaigned in 2007 and 2008 on solving the immigration problem. He entered Washington with majorities in the House and the Senate. He could have chosen to do anything to solve this problem. Instead, he chose to do nothing. Why? Because the Democrats don't want this issue solved.
Ms. Fiorina,
they want it to be an issue that they can use. As to birthright citizenship,
please.
The truth is you can't just wave your hands and say the 14th Amendment is going to go away. It will take an extremely arduous vote in Congress, followed by 2/3 of the states. And if that doesn't work to amend the Constitution, then it is a long, arduous process in court. And meanwhile, what will continue to go on is what has gone on for 25 years. With all due respect, Mr. Trump, we have been talking about illegal immigration for 25 years. San Francisco has been a sanctuary city since 1989. There are 300 of them. And meanwhile, what has happened? Nothing. The border remains insecure. The legal immigration system remains broken. Look, we know what it takes to secure a border. We've heard a lot of great ideas here. Money, manpower, technology, mostly apparently leadership, the kind of leadership that understands how to get results.
Thank you, Ms. Fiorina. Mr. Trump, I want to give you a chance to respond.
100%, by the way, with Carly on the fact that the Democrats do not want to solve this problem for the obvious reasons, but they do not. But I believe that a reading of the 14th Amendment allows you to have an interpretation where this is not legal and where it can't be done. I've seen both sides, but some of the greatest scholars agree with me without having to go through Congress. If you do go through Congress, you can absolutely solve the problem.
Thank you, Mr. Trump.
You would stipulate, Mr. Trump, that not everyone agrees with you.
That's true, sure.
Mr. Trump, why would you be better at creating jobs than Carly Fiorina?
Well, let me just explain. The head of the Yale Business School, Jeffrey Sonnenfeld, wrote a paper recently, one of the worst tenures for a CEO that he has ever seen, ranked one of the top 20 in the history of business The company is a disaster and continues to be a disaster. They still haven't recovered. In fact, today on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, they fired another 25 or 30,000 people, saying we still haven't recovered from the catastrophe. When Carly says the revenues went up, that's because she bought Compaq. It was a terrible deal, and it really led to the destruction of the company. Now, one other company before that was Lucent. Carly was at Lucent before that. And Lucent turned out to be a catastrophe also. So I only say this. She can't run any of my companies. That I can tell you.
Ms. Fiorina, I want to give you a chance to respond.
Jeffrey Sonnenfeld is a well-known Clintonite and honestly had it out for me from the moment that I arrived at Hewlett-Packard. But honestly, Mr. Trump, I find it quite rich that you would talk about this. You know, there are a lot of us Americans who believe that we are going to have trouble someday paying back the interest on our debt because politicians have run up mountains of debt using other people's money. That is, in fact, precisely the way you ran your casinos. You ran up mountains of debt as well as losses using other people's money, and you were forced to file for bankruptcy not once,
I never filed
not
for
twice,
bankruptcy.
4 times, a record 4 times. Why should we trust you
Mr.
to
Trump.
manage
Why?
the
It's very
finances
simple.
of this nation
I tell you,
any differently
I
than you
was
manage
running-
the finances
Carly,
of your casinos?
Carly,
Mr. Trump.
I made over $10 billion. I had a casino company. Caesars just filed for bankruptcy. Chris will tell you, it's not Chris's fault either. But almost everybody in Atlantic City is either in trouble or filed for maybe I'll blame Chris.
Well,
but Atlantic City
Mr. Trump
is a
also-
disaster. Wait a minute, Carly. Wait. I let you speak. Atlantic City is a disaster, and I did great in Atlantic City. I knew when to get out. My timing was great, and I got a lot of credit for it. Many of the great business people that you know, and Carl Icahn's going to work with me on making great deals for this country, but whether it's Carl or so many others that we read about all the time,
Thank you, Mr.
they
Trump.
have...
Yes,
I'd like
what
to
do you
respond.
think of the flat tax? Do you think it's fair?
Well, I think the thing about the flat tax, I know it very well, that I don't like is if you make $200 million a year, you pay 10%. You're paying very little relatively to somebody that's making $50,000 a year and has to hire H&R Block to do the work because it's so complicated. One thing I'll say to Ben is that we've had a graduated tax system for many years, so it's not a socialistic thing. What I'd like to do is, and I'll be putting in the plan in about 2 weeks, and I think people are going to like it, it's a major reduction in taxes. It's a major reduction for the middle class. The hedge fund guys won't like me as much as they like me right now. I know them all. But they'll pay more. I know people that are making a tremendous amount of money and paying virtually no tax, and I think it's unfair.
Policy. Mr. Trump, Senator Rubio said it was, quote, very concerning to him that in a recent interview you didn't seem to know the details about some of the enemies the U.S. faces. Rubio said, if you don't know the answers to those questions, you will not be able to serve as commander-in-chief. Please respond to Senator Rubio.
Well, I heard Hewitt, a nice man, he apologized because he actually said that we had a misunderstanding, and he said today that Donald Trump is maybe the best interview there is anywhere that he's ever done. Now, unless he was just saying that on CNN to be nice, but he did say that.
Oh, you're the best interview in America.
And we had a legitimate misunderstanding in terms of his pronunciation of a word, but I would say just, well, I think it was. And he actually said that. Did you say that?
I said radio makes an interesting thing.
Okay,
Good.
so I will say this, though. You was giving me name after name, Arab name, and there are few people anywhere that would have known those names. I think he was reading them off a sheet. And frankly, I will have, and I told him, I will have the finest team that anybody's put together, and we will solve a lot of problems. You know, right now, they know a lot, and look at what's happening. The world is blowing up around us. We will have great teams and great people.
Senator
I hope that
Rubio?
answers your question. I mean, you are in the Senate, but I hope that answers your question.
Well, it does, but then it's the following way. This is an important question. I think if you're running for president, these are important issues, because look around the world today. There is a lunatic in North Korea with dozens of nuclear weapons and a long-range rocket that can already hit the very place in which we stand tonight. The Chinese are rapidly expanding their military. They hack into our computers. They're building artificial islands in the South China Sea, the most important shipping lane in the world. A gangster in Moscow is not just threatening Europe, he's threatening to destroy and divide NATO. You have radical jihadists and dozens of... They even recruit Americans using social media to try to attack us here at home. And now we've got this horrible deal with Iran where a radical Shia cleric with an apocalyptic vision of the future is also guaranteed to one day possess nuclear weapons and also a long-range rocket that can hit the United States. These are extraordinarily dangerous times that we live in. And the next president of the United States better be someone that understands these issues and has good judgment about them. Because the #1 issue that a president will ever confront, and the most important obligation that the federal government has, is to keep this nation safe. And today, we are not doing that. We are eviscerating our military, and we have a president that is more respectful to the Ayatollah in Iran than he is to the Prime Minister of Israel.
Mr. Trump, Senator Rubio seemed to be suggesting that you don't know information.
No, I don't think he's suggesting that at all. I mean,
Are you, Senator Rubio?
I don't think he's
well,
suggesting that.
Well, that's why we have a debate. I think that we should have a deeper debate about these issues, because there is no more important decision that a president will make.
But are you saying that you have the knowledge to be the president that Mr. Trump does not have?
Well, you should ask him questions in detail about the foreign policy issues our president will confront, because you better be able to lead our country on the first day. Not 6 months from now, not a year from now. On the first day in office, our president could very well confront a national security crisis. You can't predict it. Sometimes you cannot control it. And it is the federal government does all kinds of things it's not supposed to be doing. It regulates bathrooms. It regulates schools that belong to local communities. But the one thing that the federal government must do, the one thing that only the federal government can do, is keep us safe. And a president better be up to date on those issues on his first day in office, or on her first day in office.
Mr. Trump.
Well, you have to understand, I am not sitting in the United States Senate with, by the way, the worst voting record there is today, #1. I am not sitting in the United States Senate. I'm a businessman doing business transactions.
Okay.
I am doing business transactions. I will know more about this, and as you said, that was very acceptable. And when you listened to that whole interview, it was a great interview. You said it, I didn't.
Yeah,
well, now I did. But I will, listen, just 1 second.
But he addressed
just 1 second.
I never get addressed, so when I do, I'm going to jump in.
I will know more about the problems of this world by the time I sit. And you look at what's going on in this world right now by people that supposedly know this world is a mess.
I want to ask you a question, though. You've promised us great leaders, and I believe that. But Jeb Bush has laid out 20 different people that have experience around the world. There are 190 countries. You can't run the world by yourself. When are we going to get some names on your military and your foreign policy advisors?
And I'm meeting with people that are terrific people, but I have to say something because it's about judgment. I am the only person on this dais, the only person that fought very, very hard against us, and I wasn't a sitting politician, going into Iraq. Because I said going into Iraq, that was in 2003, you can check it out, I'll give you 25 different stories. In fact, a delegation was sent to my office to see me because I was so vocal about it. I'm a very militaristic person, but you have to know when to use the military. I'm the only person up here that fought against going into Iraq.
Hugh,
now,
can I make a response to that?
Just excuse me 1 second,
Can
Rand,
I make
if you
a
don't mind,
response to
Rand.
that?
You know, you are on less, you do have your 1%. I would like, and I think it's very important, I think it's important because it's about judgment. It's about judgment. I didn't want to go into Iraq, and I fought it because what I said to you, what I said was you're going to destabilize the Middle East, and that's what happened.
So he's referred to me in his
the first
remarks.
chance.
May I make a response?
Right after me, and I'll yield the floor. What do you guys say in the Senate when you're talking and debating?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Here's the facts. When Donald Trump talks about judgment, what was his position on who would have been the best negotiator to deal with Iran? It wasn't a Republican. It was Hillary Clinton. That's what you believe. I mean, the lack of judgment and the lack of understanding about how the world works is really dangerous in this kind of time that we're saying. So is that the judgment that you bring to the table, that Hillary Clinton is a great negotiator, that she could bring about a better
Your
deal
brother
with Iran?
and your brother's administration gave us Barack Obama because it was such a disaster those last 3 months that Abraham Lincoln couldn't have been elected.
You know what? As it relates to my brother, there's one thing I know for sure. He kept us safe. I don't know if you remember, Donald. You remember the rubble? You remember the firefighter with his arms around it? He sent a clear signal that the United States would be strong and fight Islamic terrorism, and he did keep us safe.
I don't know, you feel safe right now? I don't feel so safe.
Mr. Trump, you have said once or twice that you are really rich, and you are by far the richest person on this stage. Chris Christie says billionaires like you, and even people who make and earn far less, should no longer get Social Security, or at least there should be limits based on the income. You think he's wrong? And if so, why?
Speaking for myself, I'm okay with it. I think there's a certain truth to it. I know people that, frankly, it has no impact on their life whatsoever. There are many people. I would almost say leave it up to them, but I would be willing to check it off and say I will not get Social Security.
What about
I do
the
not.
country as a policy?
As a policy, I would almost leave it up to the people. Don't forget, they pay in, and maybe they do well, and maybe some people want it. But the fact is that there are people that truly don't need it, and there are many people that do need it very, very badly. And I would be willing to write mine off 100%, Dana.
So is a voluntary program a way to get the Social Security system solvent again, like that?
No, it's not. But when Donald did it, it's a good start. That's really good. No, listen.
Now, Senator Cruz, well, I think we've heard from several this evening. A backlash against vaccines was blamed for a measles outbreak here in California. Dr. Carson, Donald Trump has publicly and repeatedly linked vaccines, childhood vaccines, to autism, which, as you know, the medical community adamantly disputes. You're a pediatric neurosurgeon. Should Mr. Trump stop saying this?
Well, let me put it this way. There have been numerous studies, and they have not demonstrated that there's any correlation between vaccinations and autism. This was something that was spread widely 15 or 20 years ago, and it has not been adequately revealed to the public what's actually going on. Vaccines are very important, certain ones, the ones that would prevent death or crippling. There are others, there are a multitude of vaccines which probably don't fit in that category, and there should be some discretion in those cases. But, you know, a lot of this is pushed by big government, and I think that's one of the things that people so vehemently want to get rid of big government. You know, we have 4.1 million federal employees, 650 federal agencies and departments. That's why they have to take so much of our taxes.
Should he stop saying it? Should he stop saying the vaccines cause autism?
Well, you know, I've just explained it to him. He can read about it if he wants to. I think he's an intelligent man and will make the correct decision after getting the real facts.
Mr. Trump, as president,
well,
you would...
I'd like
I'm
to
going
respond.
right to you.
I'd like to
Mr.
respond.
Trump, as president, you would be in charge of the Centers for Disease Control and the National Institutes of Health, both of which say you are wrong. How would you handle this as president?
Autism has become an epidemic. 25 years ago, 35 years ago, you look at the statistics, not even close. It has gotten totally out of control. I am totally in favor of vaccines, but I want smaller doses over a longer period of time. Because you take a baby in, and I've seen it, and I had my children taken care of over a long period of time, over a 2 or 3 year period of time, same exact amount. But you take this little beautiful baby and you pump, I mean, it looks just like it's meant for a horse, not for a child. And we've had so many instances, people that work for me just the other day, 2 years old, 2.5 years old, a child, a beautiful child, went to have the vaccine and came back and a week later got a tremendous fever, got very, very sick, now is autistic. I only say it's not, I'm in favor of vaccines. Do them over a longer period of time, same amount.
Thank you.
Just in little sections.
Dr. Carson?
And I think you're going to see a big impact on autism.
Dr. Carson, you just heard his medical take.
He's an okay doctor. Okay. But, you know, the fact of the matter is, we have extremely well-documented proof that there's no autism associated with vaccinations. But it is true that we are probably giving way too many in too short a period of time. And a lot of pediatricians now recognize that, and I think are cutting down on the number and the proximity in which those are done.
And
I
that's
think
all
that's
I'm saying, Jake. That's
Dr.
all
Paul?
I'm saying.
Dr. Paul, I'd like to bring you in. Mr. Trump.
Well, because she's been sitting for 3 hours, I think my daughter Ivanka, who's right here. Other than that, we'll go with Rosa Parks. I like that.
Governor. Ever ready. It's very high energy, Donald.
Mr. Trump?
Humble.
That's a good one.
Dr. Carson?
If I become president, we will do something really special. we will make this country greater than ever before. We'll have more jobs. We'll have more of everything. We were discussing disease. We were discussing all sorts of things tonight, many of which will just be words. It'll just pass on. I don't want to say politicians, all talk, no action. But a lot of what we talked about is words, and it'll be forgotten very quickly. If I'm president, many of the things that we discussed tonight will not be forgotten. We'll find solutions, and the world will respect us. They will respect us like never before, and it'll be actually a friendlier world. And I have to say, it's a great honor to be here tonight.
That is rocking his wife's presidential campaign. Former president sitting down with our Fareed Zakaria to explain why he thinks the private server Hillary used as Secretary of State has become such a big deal.
There will be a new president in 2017, January. You're, some would say, the most skilled student of American politics. Why do you think Hillary Clinton is having a tougher time than many imagined? The lead in the national polls has narrowed. Iowa and New Hampshire seem tough.
Well, I think you know why. I think you know why. In 1992, I received a call in 91, before I started running for president, from the Bush White House, from a man I did. He said, "We've looked at the field. You're the only one that can win. The press has to have someone every election. We're going to give them you. You better not run." So all of a sudden, something nobody thought was an issue, Whitewater, that turned out never to be an issue, wound up being a $70 million investigation. And all the hammering happened, and you ask voters, do you really believe this? This amounts to anything? No. But do you trust him as much? No. There must be something. So this is just something that has been a regular feature of all of our presidential campaigns, except in 2008 for unique reasons. So ever since Watergate, something like this happens. I'd rather it happen now than later. And it was always going to happen. The other party doesn't want to run against her, and if they do, they'd like her as mangled up as possible. And they know that if they leak things and say things, that is catnip to the people who get bored talking about what's your position on student loan relief or dealing with the shortage of mental health care. We're seeing history repeat itself, and I actually am amazed that she's borne up under it as well as she has. But I have never seen so much expended on so little. There have been a shocking number of really reputable press people who have explained how you can't receive or transmit classified information, how the government has no central authority for classification, that defense, state, and the intelligence agencies have their own. I mean, there have been a lot of really fine things. It's just that they don't seem to show up on television very much. And it is what it is. But I think she went out and did her interviews, said she was sorry that using her personal email caused all this confusion, and she'd like to give the election back to the American people. And I trust the people. I think it'll be all right. But it's obvious what happened. You know, at the beginning of the year, she was the most admired person in public life, and she earned it. Why? Because she was being covered by people who reported on what she was doing. The New START treaty, the Iran sanctions, tripling the number of people on AIDS getting medicine for no more tax money. America was, when she left office, our approval rating was more than 20 points higher than it had previously been. What happened? The presidential campaign happened. And the nature of the coverage shifted from issue-based to political. And it happened. You can't complain. This is a contact sport. They're not giving the job away. And people who want to race wanted her to drop some. And the people in the other party desperately wanted it because she's already put out more positions on more issues and said how she would pay for them, I think, than all the others combined based on the Republicans, based on the two debates I saw.
But you think it's a Republican plot, really?
No, I'm not going there because that's what it's not a plot. Makes it sound like it's a secret. No, I think that there are lots of people who wanted there to be a race for different reasons. And they thought the only way they could make it a race was a full-scale frontal assault on her. And so this email thing became the biggest story in the world.
Very interesting to hear his perspective. You can see Freed's entire sit-down interview with Bill Clinton. We may be seeing the start of that. The former president sat down with CNN's Fareed Zakaria, weighing in on the phenomenon that is Donald Trump.
I got to ask you about Donald Trump. And as a great student of American politics, what explains Donald Trump?
Well, first of all, he's a master brander. And when you got a lot of people running and people are trying to make distinctions, being able to put a personal stamp on it so people identify with who you are counts for something, certainly in the beginning. Then he said to the working class supporters of the Republican Party that have largely shifted over for cultural reasons. I'll give you economic reason to vote for me. I'll build a wall around the southern border of America and I'll stop buying Chinese imports. So your incomes will go up. Now, that'll all have to be fleshed out in the course of time, and I'm sure the future debates will do it. But he's got a lot of pizzazz and zip. He's branded himself in a clear way, and he's generated some excitement. And it remains to be seen what's going to happen. It's an unusual election. You know, there doesn't seem to be much interest yet on their side. I think there is on our side because both Hillary and Senator Sanders have laid out pretty detailed, positive policy positions, talked about what they would cost. And, you know, you could actually have a debate there where you could discuss the relative merits of their positions on health care or generating jobs or lifting incomes or whatever. But over there, it seems to be more about resentments and one-liners. I don't know. It's interesting.
Could Trump be the nominee?
I think so.
Wow.
I mean, how do I know? I don't understand any of it very well. Look, I've been out of politics a long time. I haven't run for office in 20 years. And also, I'm not mad at anybody. I mean, you know, I'm a grandfather. I love my foundation. I'm proud of Hillary. I'll do what I can to help her. But I'm not the best pundit anymore. I don't have a good feel for this. All I know is what I think is good for the country. And I think the country needs somebody who can give us broadly shared prosperity, help families and kids, try to reduce the impact of all this huge anonymous money in our political system, and in a world full of challenges, keep big bad things from happening and make as many good things happen as possible. That's how I would define the job of the next president. That's what I think. And so I think Hillary would be a great president.
You will get more of Fareed's interview with Bill Clinton. It'll come up in our 7 o'clock hour of New Day here. The former president